Thank you. Next up is the adoption of the agenda. Could I have a motion?
Move approval. Second.
Jones approves, or moves to approve, a second by Lehman. All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call.
Okay, yes, I know. Oh, sorry. Roll call.
Drew?
Yes.
Lehman? Jones? Solomon? Armstrong?
Aye.
Motion carries.
General public comment, a time for the members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present, and I have no speaker slips. So general public comment is now closed. We go to consent items 1 through 7. Public comment is open on items 1 through 7. I have no request slips, so now general public comment is closed on those items. Do we have any members that would like to remove an item from 1 through 7? Seeing no lights in the queue, I would say that. Okay. Lehman moves to approve, and second by Solomon. All in favor? Roll call.
Drew?
Aye.
Lehman? Jones? Solomon? Armstrong?
Aye.
Motion carries.
That brings us to non-consent items, items 8 through 9. I do have a request slip from Todd Gagney, but we're going to wait until we get to item number 9 to call you up, sir. So public comment is now closed on those items. Moves us to item number 8, second reading and recommendation of ordinance number 6388, an ordinance to amend provisions of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to the storage and parking of certain vehicles and trailers. Move to approve by Solomon, second by Lehman. Roll call, please.
Drew?
Aye.
Lehman?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Solomon?
Aye.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 9, request from 11 Main LLC for no-build easement over city-owned property adjacent to 415 St. Joseph Street. This was continued from July 29, 2020 during the Legal and Finance meeting, and we have a presentation from Todd Gagney.
Do you guys have it on electronically or just use the paper? Okay.
Could you please still state your name and your address, please?
Yep, my name is Todd, T-O-D-D, Gagney, G-A-G-N-E. Address is 23823 Ranch View Court, Rapid City, South Dakota.
Okay, take it away.
Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about the project that we started talking with last 2 weeks ago.
Could we get the lights down, please? Thank you.
So here it's basically the proposal that we have been discussing. We are interested in building on the 406 St. Joe. We've purchased that lot, and we'd requested an easement. Since the last meeting, we've been talking with staff about purchase of the 8 city lots west of that. And it's to continue to build this 14,000 square foot commercial real estate project. It's to support Property Meld, which is a fast-growing software company here in the region. And here's a picture of kind of, unfortunately it's not in color, but you get a sense of modern-looking building, a fair amount of glass, rooftop terrace, which we think is kind of one of the more unique and interesting features. So think about, we've talked about chamber events up there. Certainly they've been talking about award ceremonies, that sort of stuff. So something that would add to the downtown corridor from a design perspective. My partner and I have done a number of these. Matt Ellman is the other partner in this. He's done a number, more than I have. He's been involved in the TMA building, which now houses Harriet and Oak and a number of other businesses here. He owns the garage. He did a redo of the Bader Saddle building, which was 317 Main. And then the project that he and I worked on last was this 11 Main, which was the old Quick Quarter building. Many of you were familiar with it. It was pretty run down, 1940s bakery. We did a renovation, put a fair amount of money in it, and then were able to move Property Meld, which was just a handful of people from the incubator behind the School of Mines into that property. I had planned for the city council meeting on Monday to have Ray and Tom Johnson come. This is a little bit about his story. Ray's. So he's the founder and CEO, School of Mines grad, left his career, left the Black Hills, and came back to start this real estate company, technology company. 43 employees today. I think some of the more impressive pieces are the revenue growth, over 90% year over year for the last 4 years, and they expect to continue to grow 60% annually to have over 100 employees in 2022. And I think in putting it in context with COVID, they had their best month ever in the history of the company last month. So, either they've got a solution that really works for the market today, but I think that's a positive story and something we want to support here locally. I also talked with Tom Johnson a little bit about Tom and I have worked quite a bit on how do we find more companies like Property Meld to invest in, smart people that have an idea and really making sure that we can grow them here locally. And so one of the things that Tom did for me was plug in to some software that he has around what's the economic impact to our local tax base if we add these types of roles. These are average of $75,000 per head count, and you can kind of get a sense of our kind of targeted growth over the next couple of years. I penciled in the money number, which is almost $1 billion in change in taxes to the positive over a 36-month period. And so Tom would like to present this to you guys on Monday if we move forward with this, but he's got the analysis to back this up. But I thought that this was a positive thing. And then this is really kind of where we've netted out with staff. I initially started about figuring out how do we price those 8 lots. We started with our purchase in April of 2020. We purchased the city lot that we're there. It's $15.28 per square foot. Staff had recommended $17 a square foot as a starting point. And then we went out to Chris Long from Keller Williams, and we asked for some validation if that was within the ballpark cost for lots downtown. He validated that it was, and so we basically put together a proposal around the 28,000 square feet that are there, and then some discounting based on some of the conditions that we have. One of the conditions that we're being asked if we do purchase is to continue to hold on to the surface parking for 3 years. And so there's contracts that are associated with that. And so we can't do anything with it for those 3-year period. The other 5% discount was to also take on maintenance. There was a proposal in between these about they would lease back the land from us from just a flat fee. And in this model, they're basically saying you take over the lease agreements as well as maintenance, snow removal, and insurance on the properties. So if you take those deductions, this is where we end up for those city lots. There are a couple of other open issues that we're working through. There's an easement on the stock growers building that we have to work through, and there's also an access issue to their basement that crosses over on these city lots. So those are some items that we're still working through with staff. I've been really happy working with the group and getting a lot of this additional information, but this is the proposal that we'd like to do to move forward. That's the end of the presentation.
Do we have questions from the seated members? Don't all jump in at once. Jason Solomon,
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. May I direct a question to our city attorney, please?
please do.
Joel, so this figure of $17 per square foot, how did you arrive at that option to present to this group?
Well, first of all, I think it was more clear from what Todd said. I threw that out as like a ballpark starting point. I don't know that that's the number. Again, I'm not a realtor, and this isn't my area of expertise. But what I did is on our staff rapid map, you can go look at sales, commercial sales. So I looked at a few of the commercial sales. We also have the appraisal for the 5th and St. Joe property, although at the time when I ballparked it, I knew about what it was and ballparked it. I have it now. It's fairly old. It's a little over $1 million, but it was older than I thought it was. I thought we had gotten it updated more recently. It appears the most updated version is 2014. So again, I'm not sure how accurate that would be, but I looked at the sale of the Imperial lot. I looked at, frankly, their sale. really there isn't a lot of bare ground for sale in downtown, so
Right.
there isn't a lot of comparables. The high was the Imperial at about $22 a square foot for bare land. Theirs was the low at $15 a square foot. So, you kind of look at in between there as a starting point, and I don't have the exact number off the top of my head of the Fifth and St. Joe property, but it was along those lines as well in that area. And so I know I've talked to Alderman Roberts, who is a realtor. I think if he were here, he would opine that the property is probably worth a lot more than $17 a square foot. So, that's kind of where the value number came up with. Again, I think the options are that you could tell these guys, no, we're not interested in any easement, or we would do an easement where you agreed to revoke it. The problem with that is, it's going to change probably the materials that they have to build at least that side of the building out of, which is going to make the project more expensive. And I don't know what that does to the overall viability of the project. I think the reality is that this is about more than probably windows, because it's also about the material on that side of the building if they have to build it so it's fire rated. We have, as another option, discussed if we don't go down the sales route, that they would be willing to pay for an easement. And again, we've discussed in the mid 20,000s. That would be for the 10 feet about $14 or $15 a square foot, which is, I think, recognizing that a significant amount of the value of that 10 feet would be decreased because nobody would really be able to build there. Now, that doesn't mean they couldn't use it. They could use it for parking. They could use it for other outdoor features and things like that. The other option would be at that point to maybe negotiate with these guys on if somebody wanted to develop that portion of it, what the value of that would be, and purchase that back. But I guess to retrofit the building and make it work, probably be pretty expensive. The other option, again, when we were discussing trying to bring you options, was trying to find a creative option. In the middle was maybe just look at selling the property. One of the reasons we had not agreed to discuss that initially was the concern over needing probably that as surface parking for at least a couple of years until Fifth and St. Joe develops and we have an alternative parking there. And this is where I think that proposal came up, is if we went down the sales route, because then this group would be responsible for developing that property, so they could develop it in a way that was harmonious with what they were doing with property meld. That's kind of where we came up with this proposal and this as a potential option for the council to consider. So.
Okay. I think that's helpful to understand where that number comes from, because sometimes I think we put a value on hope and potential of what it could be. Because if you wait another 3 years, it won't be worth 17. It'll be worth much more, but that was also true 3 years ago. And once they develop it, of course it's going to be worth more. That's always the way the real estate goes. So you have to put a value on what it is right now, because that's the cleanest thing that you can do. And so I appreciate that you actually use some evidence of what commercial property, including theirs, which was 15, to come up with the 17 number. I'll say the same thing I said 2 weeks ago. I think as a city, we need to do everything we can to promote job growth and, of course, development east of 5th Street. And this is exactly the kind of property and exactly the kind of success stories that you like to see. A company that started here from a School of Mines grad that is growing by leaps and bounds, will create jobs almost over the next 3 years, $981,000 of tax revenue, according to our economic development expert. That's pretty significant. I will say I met with Mr. Gagne earlier today, just so everybody knows. I wanted to hear some more information and see what he had to share, which is he shared this presentation with me, so I appreciated that. But this is an outstanding project, and so I hope that we can get to a resolution that works for everybody. I yield.
Thank you, and Chair recognizes Pat Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So your number one idea, you are asking for the no-build easement, right? Best case scenario, that's what you're asking for.
That's correct.
Okay. What would be your second best option?
Probably the purchase of the land adjacent to the property.
All of that land or just that 10 feet?
I think we'd take all the land if we could come to an agreement on price. Yep.
All the land?
Yes.
And then would that include the 3-year contracts for snow removal, et cetera, as you presented?
It is, if we can come to terms that make sense from a financial perspective, yes.
And you had started at $17 a square foot, asked for 5% discounts in a couple of places, so my amazing math skills got that to $15.30 a square foot once the discounts are out.
Okay.
Is that correct?
That sounds about right, yes.
Okay. I was a band director, so my math isn't always the best. So now if I may shift to Joel, please?
Sure, of
Thank you.
course.
So, same questions. What is the city's best scenario? Because, I mean, this is a tremendous project. It's exciting, $75,000 jobs. This is wonderful. What a great thing to bring. And that it's incubated from the School of Mines thing that we wanted to have happen and now coming forward. This is awesome. It's everything we want it to be. We can't let the details get in the way. We have to make this work. This is exciting. So, Joel, same questions to you. We don't have a recommendation per se in front of us. What's the city, and Pauline too, if you want to chime in financially, love to hear what you have to say. What are the city's best choice and second choice as we move forward?
You know, and we've been talking, and I've enjoyed working with Todd, and we've been talking up till yesterday, and I mean, I could put together a recommendation, but ultimately it's kind of going to be up to you to decide philosophically what you think the best option is. You know, on one hand, these are local guys. I think if they were to get this property, if we could preserve it, and I think they will develop it. I suspect, however, if you go down the sales route, you're going to hear that there might be some other people that would have been interested, and of course, it's going to be very easy for them at that point to say they would pay you more for it. So, you know, you guys are aware. You know, I don't know that for this property we want to go down the full-blown route. We went with like 5th and St. Joe, where we RFP it and do all that, and frankly, that takes a lot of time. So there's some advantages, obviously, with them developing it. Whatever they do is going to be harmonious on that lot with what they're doing with the property melts, so that there's a lot of makes sense there. They've done some other things in that area. But on the other hand, again, are you necessarily getting the best deal for the land? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, if you put it up for sale and let everyone bid on it openly, you might get more money for it. So I think really you guys need to decide as a policy question, what is the value of this project, and does this make sense? And yeah, we recognize we might be able to get a better deal, but overall, big picture, we think this is the best route to go. If you're not sure, then you could pursue the easement route. I think the main obstacle, or the reason that staff was not supportive of an easement previously, is because there was a misunderstanding that whether or not they were willing to pay it and how much they would be willing to pay for it. If they're willing to pay for the easement, I think staff's objection really wouldn't object. I mean, that at least we're getting something for the rights and the property we're giving up. The question, again, we can sit and debate value. When you start talking what is the value of a no-build easement, it becomes a lot more difficult to determine. But since the amount, if you accept the $17, $18 a square foot is reasonable, then I think the $25,000 range is reasonable. But again, this isn't my area of expertise. So a realtor or somebody else might tell you something different.
Okay, thank you. Pauline, do you want to say anything?
I'm probably not going to be as politically correct as Joel and
Or as lengthy?
saying that you guys need to decide what you want to do. From my perspective, my preference would be the revocable no-build easement, kind of like what we have with the Stockmans. That would be my first choice, just because it doesn't tie anybody's hands in the future for the use of that 10-foot space. From there, honestly, I think either one would be fine, whether we sell it, as long as we get a market rate for it, or if we sell the non-revocable easement. I do think there has to be some kind of compensation if a future buyer cannot use that space. I do worry that we're not getting the best market rate for it when we don't know what that really is at this time, or what the potential is when we see some other growth in the areas. So I hesitate to cut the city short in trying to optimize any revenue that we could make off of that to expand our parking system elsewhere, but those would be my pecking order.
Thank you. Can I ask for an extension, Madam Chair?
You can come back in after someone else is
Thank you.
spoken. Lance is in the queue here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am inclined to agree with Pauline. At this point, I'm kind of leaning towards the revocable easement, and I would like to make a motion to move to council without recommendation at this time.
We can get a second on that and continue to discuss. So, no second? I can't do that?
I'll second it.
Oh, Laura seconds. Oh, and, okay.
I'd
is
also
it-
like to speak.
Do you have anything you'd like to add, Laura? Do you have some questions out there?
Is it my turn?
Are you done, Lance? Oh, yes, it is your turn.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I heard Mr. Landine mention, he goes, you know, you want to get the best deal for the land, and I understand the financial aspect of that. But I'd also like to go back to what Mr. Solomon said, and looking at just the grand plan. And I think the true value is not just the land. I get the financial aspect of it, but the value of the project, the job creation, and how it's going to benefit concurrent projects that are already in existence, like our east of 5th, and connecting the School of Mines to downtown. I, too, am excited about this potential project, and I would encourage Mr. Ellman and Mr. What was his name?
Gagne.
Gagne. Thank you. To maybe for Monday come up with Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. I think public-private partnerships are wonderful. I'm impressed with Mr. Gagne and Mr. Ellman's project with the garage, and I think it might encourage other people to work with the city and do good things. I mean, you look at Presidential Plaza and how that kind of fell apart. Personally, I thought there were too many chefs in that kitchen at that time. And so far, I think the dialogue between this group and city attorney's office has been productive. And maybe they can bring something forward for us on Monday to follow Mr. Lehman's motion. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. Now we'll go back to Jason Solomon for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was going to make a motion, but I need an answer to a question first, because I think we might be dealing with two separate issues. So could we do something where we would grant the revocable no-build easement, but still negotiate, not from the dais, the either 10-foot strip or beyond for the land after that, so they still have that negotiation happening, but at least let them get their project moving forward?
Well, I don't know that that would really accomplish that, because
And I
I
only have
mean,
a couple minutes
if
here,
we
so-
give them, I don't know what that's going to do to the, I don't know what that's going to do to the project, because the building materials, if there's going to be a building up against that building, the materials and some of the things they're going to do are going to have to change. And I don't know that they're going to want to proceed with that under the idea, I think that's kind of been Mr. Gagne's point all along, is, you know, I need to know one way or another whether I'm going to have to build with these materials or these materials, because that's going to affect the cost of the building. And the revocable easement, I think you're taking a pretty big risk building with the lighter, because you might have to tear out that whole wall and build a new wall if the city says, nope, we've sold this now 2 years later. I think if you make a decision whether you're going to support, no, we're not going to do anything now, we're not going to encumber the city property at all, so you basically have to build it like it's going to it's going to be up against a building, or we're not going to sell it, but we'll explore the easement. That probably will be pretty quick. Or we'd like to, I think maybe the alternatives are, we're either going to sell you an easement or we're going to sell you the whole property.
Right.
Those two, I think you could choose one of those two and say, and talking to Mr. Gagné, correct me if I'm wrong, if we want to keep exploring the sale piece of it, they're okay with the easement. So if they know that you'll grant them the easement, whether or not we ever make the sale piece of it work, then that would probably allow them to proceed. But you're committing at that point, I think, to the easement. If you don't want to commit to the easement, then they're probably going to have to readjust their project to move forward with the wall. I mean, getting that up.
My thing today is I wanted to try to get us to at least a direction for the council for Monday night, rather than not sending it without recommendation again. That's all. But Mr. Gagné, option A, would you agree is basically as presented, where you are probably asking for your discounted rate of $15, 30 cents, something along those lines, for the lot? Your option B is probably the 10-foot easement, and then option C presents just the no-build easement, or have it revocable after 3 years, something like that.
Yeah, and I think just to be super clear, and this is not a negotiation piece, I think, Joel, your comments about materials and what the aesthetics look like is an issue, and it's not cheap. And so I think if there's a revocable easement on this, I think we've started to look at other places to put this.
Okay.
Just because I think we want this aesthetic, and we have some other property downtown.
All right, that helps me. I think I know how I'll vote, but I can't make the motion after talking, but just wanted to get us, I would like to get us to a decision, a recommendation to the council, if we could today. That'd be my preference, but we'll see. Thank you.
Okay, my hopes are good, but anyway, we'll go to Pat Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
2 minutes or half an hour, or whatever.
Could be either. This reminds me of trying to get a prom date. And there are 3 girls out there that I want to ask to go to prom. And I could ask the first one, and she's kind of cute, but if I ask her and she says yes, what if I want to ask the second one? Would all people who want to build a project on this land step forward? Hey, there's no one here. We have a tremendous project in front of us here that has incubated its way down the line to be something that the city wants to have happen. And so we have an obligation to be good stewards of the city's finances and land, but also to embrace those projects and help them move forward. The discounts for the snow removal and the other stuff, I don't really buy into that a whole lot. I understand it, but I don't buy into it a whole lot. So I would like to make a motion that we sell the land at $17 a square foot and allow the project to move forward.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to sell the land at it's a substitute motion to sell the land at $17 a square foot. We've got Pat Jones made that motion, second by Jason Solomon. And now I would like to chime in on a few things before we vote. I've got a couple questions for Todd. So I just want to understand this, because I was thinking this was just going to be space that you rented out, but actually Property Meld is going to take this over, is that right? And they rent the offices?
They do. Yep, that's what we're planning on doing.
How many offices are there that you're planning on?
So it's an open floor plan, so there will have space for about 103 people in that building.
Okay.
Between
and
the two.
Even after COVID, you're feeling fairly confident that people will still want to work in an office space?
So I think it's a valid question. I think that the culture that Ray has prescribed is he wants his people in the office. And I think we generally have a pretty young staff there that needs guidance and direction. And so we had a space where they were all working from home, and basically about June 15th, he asked everybody to come back in and did all the things that he did need to do. And so the thought process is, yes, that's the way he'd like to run his business.
Okay, and when you are constructing the new stuff, is there a green consideration to your work?
We have been working with the consolidated engineering design on green concepts within our architectural design, yes.
That would really sway me as far as I feel about the project. So if you could come in with some more information on that, I'd really appreciate it.
Okay, that's good feedback.
And for Pauline, I think that you brought up at one time that your city use and the parking that was used there was a concern. So if they buy it all, what happens to the parking space we're using there, or whatever we're using that area for?
So it depends on if we work on an agreement where they do leasing for 3 years. The preliminary conversations on that is if they keep that as lease parking for 3 years, we
For
would,
us, for the city?
no.
No.
If they buy the lot, they would keep at least parking for 3 years. We would give them the contact information for those individuals that have leases in that lot, so that they would get first opportunity to lease them back again, but through them. The reason being, more than likely, rates will have to be increased. Either way, whether we keep the lot or we give it to them, rates should probably be increased already to our, the $41 level instead of the $31 level. But they still would probably have to, over those 3 years, increase those rates. So that way, they have the opportunity to know what their new rates would be under their lease versus our lease. They can make the decision, business decision, if that's what they want to continue with. If not, then they can go out and find other leaseholders or lease it to the occupants in the building or whatever they want to do, as long as it was still lease parking for the 3-year time period.
Okay.
It would come out of our control altogether.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Thank you for being really clear on that, because I was kind of muddy on that one. And then for Joel, you know, or anybody here, we do, when we feel that a project is really important and is going to move the city forward in some way, we do make some kind of concessions on pricing. And so I don't know what the cost of land was for the new Ascent Center, but that's pretty valuable land in my book. But do you have any idea how much they paid for that? Is anybody? We donated that land. Okay.
I can tell you how much we paid for it, and
How much did we pay for it? 1.4 million.
that would have been, what, 2009 or 10? Well, no, Sam Quaker was mayor, so
Okay, all
I
I'm
would say
saying
2012.
is we make concessions. When we think that something is really good for our city, it might not go in our pocketbook, but it goes towards our future. So
Yes.
I'm thinking that, you know, if that's the kind of concession we make for an Ascent Center, that, you know, this is not that different in many ways, and it's also a homegrown kind of thing from the School of Mines. So, you know, I would tend to go along with Mr. Jones' recommendation, and because we have a precedent of helping businesses that we think will benefit us for the future, and help us right now, too. So that's all I have to say. Finance Officer Pauline Sumption.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify, though, or give you a little bit more information. The difference is, though, the Ascent Center went to Economic Development Corporation or Foundation or Partnership, whichever title that they use. I honestly can't remember. They are a nonprofit entity. We have the ability to give nonprofit entities surplus, whatever, land, cars, computers, whatever. We don't have that same ability with private business.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that's different. The other thing that's different, we weren't using that land other than for some storage, cold storage. And this is income generating property for the city. So we're already going to be giving up something because we're giving up that income generation.
Got it.
So from my perspective, those are the differences.
I'm just going to ask Todd a question. I'm going to give myself some leeway here. Todd, do you have a nonprofit arm of your organization?
We do not.
Really? I thought that the garage had some things they did, and
Oh, I'm
you
sorry.
met.
So Matt and I are partners on different pieces of it. So the 11 Main, which is where Property Meld is, that's an LLC that we own together. He has other business partners for the garage and for the TMA building and for Bader Saddle. And so, yes, I think you're correct. Matt has an organization that is a nonprofit through the garage with the New Man Group.
So, yeah, so I think that we could expect from you maybe some help if we need it on the engineering side, software side, things like that, from other nonprofits. I hear that that's a real stumbling block for a lot of them. And so maybe that's an arrangement we make down the line. I'm not saying it has to be part of this now, but maybe think of the way that you're going to help the community other than just create jobs. Because we have a very strong nonprofit community here, and they need technical help. So that might be something you consider to just sell this a little bit easier.
Okay, I appreciate the
Okay.
feedback.
All right, and I am done, and we have a motion on the floor. Roll call.
Drew?
Aye.
Lehman? No. Jones? Aye. Solomon? Armstrong?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, you have your marching orders, and we'll
Thank
see you
you.
on Monday.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Move to adjourn by Solomon, second by Lehman. All in favor? Aye. We don't need a roll call.